The U.S. president has warned that Russia could enter Ukraine, but exactly what that means is still unclear. Here are the details. U.S. President Joe Biden predicted in a press conference that Russia will move into Ukraine after amassing 100,000 troops around its borders in recent weeks. According to CNN, however, White House officials were forced to clarify that any incursion would be met with a severe response after Biden suggested a minor incursion could be treated differently to a full invasion. The precise definitions matter because NATO allies are not united on how to respond to Russia, and there are a number of different forms any Russian action could take. Deutsche Welle reported last month, for instance, that a Russian court had acknowledged Russian soldiers are already present in the Donbas region of Ukraine, though the Kremlin denies it, while a press statement by White House spokesperson Jen Psaki suggested aggression short of military action, including cyberattacks and paramilitary tactics, would be treated separately to any Russian military forces moving across the Ukrainian border, which it said would be seen as a renewed invasion. The phrase renewed invasion referred to the fact that Russia seized Crimea 8 years ago and backed the separatist forces who took control of the Donbas region. As of now, according to the New York Times, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Russia wants security guarantees which would block NATO from expanding eastward into its sphere of influence, and, according to President Biden, cited by Reuters, Putin has asked specifically that Ukraine never join NATO and that strategic or nuclear weapons never be stationed on Ukrainian soil. In terms of concrete consequences should Russian troops enter Ukraine, the U.S. president said Russian companies could lose the ability to use the U.S. dollar and said more ambiguously that it's going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine. Bloomberg reports that the U.S. military is preparing for a possible invasion of Ukraine by Russia around January next year. The news outlet says multiple sources say the Pentagon has shared intelligence with its allies showing a buildup of Russian troops and artillery that can quickly turn into a rapid, large-scale push into Ukraine from multiple locations if President Vladimir Putin decided to invade. Satellite images and other information shows that around 100 Russian battalion tactical groups, comprised of around 100,000 troops, could quickly push into Ukraine from Crimea, the Russian border, and via Belarus. Bloomberg sources also said Moscow called up tens of thousands of reservists on a scale unprecedented in post-Soviet times. Such reservists would be used to occupy ground taken by the battalions. Ukraine's intelligence chief told the Military Times that Russia is preparing for an attack by the end of January and that the attack would involve airstrikes, amphibious assaults, and an incursion through Belarus. The BBC reports that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is escalating dangerously as multiple sources are reporting large Russian military movements towards the eastern Ukrainian border and into the Crimea, which Russian forces annexed from Ukraine in March of 2014. Ukrainian intelligence sources told the BBC that the additional Russian forces amount to 16 battalion tactical groups, which would be up to 14,000 soldiers. Ukraine says this means that when you add the forces that were conducting exercises, Russia now has about 40,000 troops on the eastern border and about 40,000 in Crimea. Russia also announced that it had moved a force of 10 artillery boats and landing craft to the Black Sea. Ukraine's armed forces maintain 255,000 troops, making it the third largest force in Europe after Russia and France. Most of the Ukraine's warplanes, helicopters, tanks, and ships were inherited from the Soviet Union, but due to economic issues, many of these outdated war machines are not functional. There has been a serious confrontation between British and Russian forces in the Black Sea. It involved at least 20 aircraft and 2 Russian Coast Guard boats, which at times were just 100 meters or 328 feet away from a British warship. Here's what you need to know. The British warship HMS Defender has been involved in a confrontation with Russian forces within the 12-mile or 19-kilometer limit of Crimea's territorial waters, according to the BBC. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014 in a move other nations considered illegitimate. BBC footage shows Russian jets swooping down alongside the British vessel and contained the sounds of gunshots in the distance, but details outside of these are contested. The UK Ministry of Defence's position is that the HMS Defender was traveling through an internationally recognized transit route, and Russian vessels shadowed it in a routine manner, according to the BBC. It says any shots fired were part of a Russian gunnery exercise nearby. Russia, on the other hand, says it fired warning shots and dropped bombs to force the British Royal Navy destroyer to change routes, accusing the ship of violating its borders, according to Al Jazeera. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea allows for what it describes as innocent passage through a state's territorial sea, and according to the BBC, Britain's case is that its vessel was merely taking the most direct route between its starting point in Odessa, Ukraine, and its destination in Georgia. Russia contests this, with its UK embassy tweeting that the HMS Defender's passage was a deliberate provocation rather than a legitimate routine transit. In January this year, it reacted similarly strongly when two U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers entered the Black Sea. Tensions between Russia and NATO members have risen considerably in recent months, with Russian President Vladimir Putin telling NBC 2 weeks ago that relations between Russia and the U.S. were at their lowest point in years. Details recently emerged of the Russian Navy conducting some of its largest drills in the Central Pacific since the end of the Cold War, according to The Drive. Evidently, both sides are acting aggressively towards one another right now. For Britain's part, the movements of the HMS Defender can be seen as a specific test of Russia's resolve over Crimea, according to one retired colonel with Britain's Royal Marines who spoke to Reuters. Russia is trying to create facts on the ground and get them respected internationally so that their annexation is in effect rubber-stamped by the world, he said, and what we're seeing is Britain's response. The Russian response, he added, is extraordinarily robust, a tad undiplomatic, and way over the top. However, the BBC reports that Britain likely knew exactly what it was getting involved in here. Previous incidents would have told them what to expect, and the provocation on Britain's part represents part of a new, deliberately forward-leaning defense policy, which it outlined in an integrated review 3 months ago. It committed, for instance, to exceeding its NATO spending commitments. More specifically, regarding Wednesday's Black Sea incident, one source told BBC diplomatic correspondent James Landale that the HMS Defender was not there to pick a fight, but to make a point, to assert its right to freedom of navigation in international waters. Clearly, the difference between picking a fight and making a point is a matter of semantics if, in the course of making your point, you are very much aware that you will start a fight. Chinese and Russian warships have teamed up to encircle Japan. Here's what you need to know. A joint naval exercise between China and Russia has completed a near full circle of Japan, reinforcing tensions in the region, according to CNN. The Chinese warships included a Type 55 destroyer, a Type 55D destroyer, and 2 Type 54A frigates, while the Russian ships included 2 Udaloy-class destroyers, 2 Styrechoi-class corvettes, and a Marshal-Nidilin-class ship, according to The Drive. The exercises have brought the charge of hypocrisy because China regularly condemns similar exercises by the U.S. in the Taiwan Strait as destabilizing. 2 weeks ago, for instance, the Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command suggested a U.S. and Canadian transit could seriously jeopardize peace and stability in the strait, according to CNN. Both those ships and now the Chinese and Russian vessels remained in international waters, but notably the Chinese and Russian ships took a route through the Tsugaru Strait, which is only around 12 miles wide at its narrowest point. That places them well within the area that can be claimed by a country under international law, albeit Japan only actually claims areas 3 miles from either shore. The move also represents the first time Chinese and Russian naval ships have sailed the Tsugaru Strait together, according to Japan's Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary cited by Yahoo, and thus can be seen as a further escalation of tensions in a region where military activity has been growing steadily in recent months. In addition to the aforementioned U.S. passage through the Taiwan Strait earlier this month, a large international fleet made up of aircraft carriers from the U.S. and UK, a helicopter carrier from Japan, and smaller ships from the Netherlands, Canada, and New Zealand conducted exercises together off the southwest coast of the Japanese prefecture of Okinawa. Shortly after that, the United Kingdom carrier Strike Group 21 passed through the Luzon Strait on its way to Singapore, and the New Zealand Navy's HMNZS Takaha traveled alongside it in the South China Sea, while separately the UK's HMS Richmond made a rare voyage by a non-US ship through the Taiwan Strait, according to France 24. Those exercises came in the wake of China sending around 150 aircraft into Taiwan's air defense zone over a 4-day period beginning on October 1st, according to Reuters, and is widely suggested that the American-led movements in the area can be seen as an effort to contain China. However, there is also major technological buildup going on in the background to all of this. The US-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, for instance, recently released new satellite photos showing that China's new aircraft carrier is nearing completion. Images of the carrier in Shanghai's Jiangnan shipyard reveal that the new carrier has slots for 3 separate plane-launching catapult systems, making it much more effective than China's existing 2 carriers, which use simple deck ramps to launch their aircraft. These older carriers can only launch fighter-type jets with light bomb loads, while the new carrier should be able to launch and catch heavier fixed-wing planes like the US's vital E-2 Hawkeye radar platform. But China is not the only country enhancing its military capacity, with even the militarily cautious Japan revealing last year that it was developing an indigenous next-generation fighter jet to counter China's J-20. The new fighter will replace the Mitsubishi F-2, which is due to be retired in the mid-2030s. Defense News reported the unnamed fighter, dubbed the F-3, will be optimized for air dominance, stealthy, and interoperable with the U.S. military. The F-3 would carry more missiles than a U.S. F-35, and in addition, a report in Forbes stated the F-3 is also likely to carry cruise missiles, such as the ASM-3 anti-ship missile and the Sea and Land Target Joint Strike Missile. With provocative defense pacts being signed in the background to all of this military growth, it's hard to see how things get any less tense in the near future.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.